Pre-grammar school instruction. Let's say you don't go to a dame school. Uh, you don't go to the reading and writing school. You teach your kids at home. Probably the earliest thing that you would use would be something called a horn book. Uh, Picture a ping pong paddle. Okay, make it smaller now. Take a sheet of paper, a small piece of paper that will fit on the paddle segment. Write the alphabet or as much of the alphabet as you can on that. Okay, now cover it with a sheet of animal horn. Remember, plastic hasn't been invented yet. We haven't got any glass. So if we're going to protect this from the elements, we're going to have to cover that sheet of paper with something. And animal horn seems to be the most satisfactory. Then the kid can put a string of rawhide through the end of the paddle end of the uh, horn book, hang it around his or her neck, and at odd times during the day, pick it up, learn the alphabet, learn syllables, learn small words, maybe work their way up to a prayer. If you've ever been raised a Catholic, as I have, you know what the catechism is. If you've ever been in the military, you've probably seen training manuals. Catechism is a question and answer thing. How did God make you? That's the question. Answer, in his own image and likeness. And then you just go on and on and on and on after that. On down the road, the nun would come around the room and ask you the questions, and you'd have to parrot back the answer just as it was in the catechism. After that, you might graduate to the Psalter, ultimately the Bible. In 1690, a publication was advanced that put an end to all those others, the New England Primer. It contained everything that was in the Horn Book, the Catechism, the Psalter, not everything that's in the Bible, but many of the prayers. Called the Little Bible of New England because it was very somber and very, very religious in tone. It has been said of the New England Primer that it taught millions to read and not one to sin. The Latin grammar schools, these are the secondary schools of the time, remember? We're going to talk about curriculum, students, teachers, and finally, contributions. What do we retain today from the Latin grammar schools? The curriculum was dominated by the colleges. And for a long, 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 long time, it was Latin and Greek. You could learn, well, you learned Latin and Greek if you went to a Latin grammar school. And why were you learning them? So you could pass the Harvard entrance exam, and ultimately perhaps the Yale entrance exam, and get into one of those institutions. Some of them taught a little Hebrew, but not enough, not enough to take up too much time away from Latin and Greek. Ultimately, they all started teaching mathematics, but not until Yale called for arithmetic as part of its entrance requirements. And that wasn't till in the 1840s. So from 1635 on, if you went to a Latin grammar school, you were learning Latin and Greek, period. Pretty boring. Students, boys, girls need not apply. Boys at age 7 or 8, usually those who could read by now, and they could stay there until they were 15 or until they were admitted to the college. Once you passed that Harvard entrance exam, you didn't have to go to Latin grammar school anymore. There was no degree. You simply went to the college. That's why you hear of people who graduated from college at age 13 or other crazy ages like that. Most of these boys were well-to-do town kids. A farm boy could not be taken out of production. Most often, the oldest kid stayed home and learned the trade of the father, Maybe the second kid went to school. Perhaps the third kid went to school. So you had to be one of the younger children in order to uh, get the opportunity, let's say, to go to school. Who were the teachers? They too were males. A delightful book by a guy named Brown sets forth three types of teachers for the Latin grammar schools. English prepared career teachers, think Ichabod Crane. These are folks who go to college to be teachers. They come out, they become teachers, and so on and so on and so on. Secondly, unemployed divinity students or clergymen. Some of these are non-graduates of divinity schools who set out a year or two in order to earn some money in order to go back to school, or perhaps someone who has graduated from a divinity school but hasn't found a pulpit yet and needs a job. The third group is the group I like. Adventurers, indentured servants, educated rogues who taught school only to keep from starving. Every time I read that, I smile and I think of myself as an educated rogue, and you can hear me smiling again. These are people who simply could pass the interview. If you knew your Bible, you could pass the interview because certification was in the hand of the local ministers. Now, who knows their Bible? Well, by and large, those are people who have been to divinity schools at one time in their life, or who have studied enough Latin Greek to be able to teach Latin Greek to others. What do we get from the Latin grammar schools? Well, the idea of local support, the idea of our tax dollars going to support the school of your choice. Initially, this was pay for your own. Ultimately, it becomes taxes. Also, the idea of local control. These are not state-controlled institutions. They're not federally controlled institutions. The town controls it. The town calls the shot. If we have different rules than they do over in the next town, so what? It's our right to do that. And by the way, give a man a fish and he will eat for a day. Teach him how to fish and he will sit in a boat and drink beer.